Now,
on 105.9 FM and streaming worldwide on the WMAL app.
O'Connor and Company.
Good morning, Washington. It's 7:06, and it is Veterans Day. Happy Veterans Day to all of you. Thanks for tuning into News Talk 105.9 WMAL, where we are making sense of the news. We have a great show today. Coming up at 7:35, we'll talk to Trevor Matich about the Commanders game. 8:05, Matthew Hurt, chair of the Arlington GOP. He'll tell us how Arlington Republicans are preparing for the Trump administration. At 8:35, General Jack Keane, on the Iranian plot to assassinate Trump. You are listening to O'Connor and Company. I'm Julie Gunlock, sitting in for Larry alongside Hans von Spakovsky. Hey, Hans.
Hey, Julie. It's nice to be here in the first full week after one of the momentous elections in American history.
And look, I know we are all waiting for this. I have been waiting all week to talk to Joe diGenova. Good morning, Joe.
Good morning. Nice to be at Cafe Landslide.
Well, of course, the first question has to be, what was your reaction election night? I know the week before, you didn't think, when we talked to you, you said that, I think I'm remembering this right, that you didn't think we'd know that night. And we didn't. We had to wait till like 2 a.m. But what was your reaction? Did you stay up? And did you think it would be this landslide?
We did stay up. Victoria and I were up watching all the returns. We wouldn't have missed a moment of it because we knew it was going to be history. Because we knew he was going to win. The question was going to be, how long was it going to take to figure that out? Right. What we didn't get because the polls were all wrong, all of their models were wrong, and the line continues among the media about all that, was the fact that it was going to be literally a landslide. And the truth is, not only is it a landslide, it is a mandate. The President Trump comes in with a mandate to govern, and anybody who gets in his way is going to pay a political price and perhaps a legal price. One of the things that has been stunning to me is to read the stories in the Washington Post about the career civil servants and their angst about how this is going to affect their lives. Yeah. Who the hell do they think they are? They're not the President of the United States. These people are suffering, and I love it. I hope they suffer every single day, that their angst is unmeasurable, that it's over the top. Who the hell do they think they are? I'm reading this stuff in the Post. Yeah. It makes me sick to read it. They act like they're gods, like this is their government. How dare the American people speak and give him a mandate? Let me tell you something. They better find these folks and get rid of them. And the easy way to do it is just reorganize their agencies, reorganize them out of jobs.
Yeah, I would really love it if you would be in charge of firing everyone at the Department of Justice and maybe DOD too, Joe. That would really make my day. Would you do that?
I stand ready to serve.
Well, I tell you, it really is amazing. You mentioned the Washington Post. I was reading in the Washington Post about how, the Department of Defense is having internal conversations about, how they can basically circumvent. I mean, essentially circumvent Trump. You've got apparently complete panic at the DOJ. I know this is what you're referring to as sort of making your day. But do you worry at all about the sort of shenanigans of the fourth branch of government, the bureaucratic state?
Absolutely. And that's why he's got to pick the right people. Tom Homan was a great start. He needs a Homan at Justice. He needs a Homan at Defense. This stuff cannot stand. And by the way, the president doesn't need a court-martial to fire a general. He can just say, you're fired, the way he did on television. This stuff, and this could be in the Department of Justice, these people can be told, you have a job, but you're not to come into the building. You'll be paid. You won't lose any of your civil service benefits. But you're not allowed in the building. There are people right now plotting inside the Justice Department, especially the public integrity section where Andrew Weissman was and Jack Smith came from, the place where all evil doing gets done to violate the Constitution. They are plotting in ways to subvert this president. He better pick the right person for justice and the right deputy attorney general and the right assistant attorneys general. You cannot be easy on this. You've got to take a wrecking ball to the Department of Justice and the Department of Defense. And I do not want to see one more drag queen thing on a United States Naval, Air Force, Army base.
Yeah, talking about it, Joe, look, I, as a veteran of the Justice Department, I completely agree with you. But, boy, you know how tough it is to get rid of civil service protected lawyers inside the Justice Department. And it would seem to me something I have not really heard from Republicans is some kind of major effort, frankly, to radically change the civil service rules to make it much easier to fire. I mean, there's been some discussion of that, but Jesus, those rules were put in the 1870s, and they've just gotten worse over the years. But so far, I haven't really seen that. A serious proposal to completely, as much as possible, get rid of those.
Well, I think one of the things you have to do is I think this is why the first 100 days is important in Congress. There are all kinds of things you can do and get through very quickly, especially, I'm assuming it looks like now after the elections over the last couple of days that we are going to have control of the House. You can't give people a chance to run away from their duties and to start hemming and hawing. You've got to do stuff quickly. You've got to roll over people. You've got to get stuff done immediately in the House and the Senate. I noticed that Chuck Schumer is being the sleazeball that he's always been by preventing Senator-elect McCormick from coming to the training sessions for all. He won't allow him to come. This is something that if you pick the right majority leader, which I don't think is Cornyn or Thune. I think those guys do not know how to play hardball. If you pick the right majority leader, you end up making Chuck Schumer regret that he ever gets up every morning. No one deserves to be ostracized, harmed politically, and made to feel ostracized more than Chuck Schumer. One of the biggest sleazeballs in the history of American politics. Nasty, mean-spirited, anti-Catholic, part of the cabal against Catholics that Dick Durbin and Kamala Harris were part of in the Senate Judiciary Committee. They just love hating Catholics. Their days are up. This is one of the things that happens most that I love is Chuck Schumer is no longer majority leader. What a sleazeball.
Well, that's true. So now what do you think about Jack Smith, instead of dismissing his cases, instead is simply asking for delays? I mean, how long is that going to go on? That's exactly what he's going to do.
That's exactly what it is. Hans, you've hit right on it. All this stuff about asking for time when he found his one-paragraph motion the other day by Jack Smith, he didn't say what he should have said, which were dismissing these cases. What they're going to do is they're going to try and shelve those cases. Obviously, the statute of limitations doesn't run because the cases have been brought, so there's no statute of limitations. He wants those cases hanging over the sitting president's head. That's not going to happen because the new attorney general is going to move, and the judge has no authority not to do this, to dismiss those cases with prejudice, which means they can never be rebrought. But that's what Smith is doing. He's maneuvering. He's going to resign, by the way, because he's not going to allow himself to be fired. He's going to leave office after he and Merrick Garland, who've done more damage to the rule of law than any two people in the history of the country, they're going to try and figure out to keep these cases alive. And the president should simply pardon everybody in all those cases and himself immediately. And this is like you should have fired James Comey on day one, along with firing Jack Smith, who will probably resign and will not allow himself to be fired. You got to fire Chris Wray on inauguration day. Chris Wray should be packing. He's such a smarmy know-it-all. That to me will be the greatest day of all. Even this will surpass Schumer when Chris Wray is gone.
Joe, we have so much more we want to ask you about. Can you stay on for another segment?
Oh, I'd be landsliding delighted.
Thank you, Joe. We continue this in just
WMAL.
Making sense of the news.
Live
from the Home Paramount Pest Control Studios.
Home Paramount, the leader in pest control since 1939.
So we're back with Joe diGenova. Joe, I got a question for you about the Alvin Bragg persecution in New York. I mean, it's not really a prosecution, but a persecution. Listen, you and I both know that in that case, he claimed a violation of federal law was going on, which, of course, as a local DA, he's got absolutely no power to prosecute. And under normal circumstances, the Justice Department, when that was first filed, would have immediately gone in and filed something with the court saying, look, this is a local DA. He's got no authority to enforce federal campaign finance law. That's our job. Justice never did that. Is it too late, do you think? Could something like that be done by a new DOJ under a new AG?
Yes, it could. And in fact, the Southern District of New York should have done that immediately, but they were told not to do so by Merrick Garland. They knew immediately that this was an improperly filed state charge, which was based on federal law. They can still go in and do that. Jurisdiction never dies. If they claim that the court has no jurisdiction over the matter, it's never too late to file that. And they can also file actions in federal court seeking to block the prosecution based on that, besides filing things in state court. This is all sorts of things that Merrick Garland has done to destroy the Justice Department. By the way, Merrick Garland gets a special gold star for doing the lawfare against President Trump because these cases, this lawfare sealed the deal. That was the thing that drove the American people wild. I know that the polling shows that the border and the economy were the big deals, and they were. But just simmering below the surface under that was lawfare and this transgender nonsense of men in women's sports, gigantic issues, which when you put them all together meant there was no way that somebody as weak, as dumb, as a horrible candidate as Kamala Harris was ever going to be elected president of the United States. And on top of all of that, 4 years of lying to the American people on every conceivable subject, you name it, the Biden administration lied to the American people about it. The cumulative effect of that type of lying is almost not measurable. You can't really tell because it seeps into the sinew of the voting public. But yes, they should go to New York right away and tell Alvin Bragg if he proceeds with the case, they're going to impanel a grand jury to investigate him for violating the civil rights of Donald Trump, because that case ought to be investigated by a grand jury for violating a conspiracy to violate the civil rights of Donald Trump, because that case was a fraud from day one. And so should Letitia James' civil case. That was a fraud from day one.
Yeah, those are pending. Of course, we also have the case down in Georgia, which apparently has been falling apart for quite a while. And you know, with the Fani Willis prosecution in Fulton County, it seems like the presidential immunity decision by the Supreme Court just totally destroyed that case, because almost everything she cited in her indictment were official acts that he was engaging in.
Not only that, the case in New York, President Trump was indicted for acts that were committed after the election. And he was alleged to have tried to influence the election by doing something after the election was over. I mean, it's the insanity of these cases. The one in Georgia, I assume the federal government would intervene there and do the same thing they can do in New York. Just tell them, you got to get out of this. That's also, in my opinion, a conspiracy to deny Donald Trump his civil rights. I think that's a criminal case. They could impanel a single grand jury to investigate all of these cases. And I think that should be done. And I think not only that, I think the department should file disciplinary proceedings in each of the bars that these DAs are members of to get them disbarred, not punished, not given the suspension, disbarred. These people should not be holding law degrees in a free society.
Joe, I wanted to get your reaction also to this FEMA scandal that broke this weekend. That FEMA official directed hurricane relief workers to avoid homes with Trump signs. FEMA claims that person has been removed, although Hans made a very good point about, does remove mean fired or just shifted around to another department to terrorize another group of people? But is this criminal? Could this
it is,
woman?
In my opinion.
Okay.
And I'm going to tell you something. Just as I've said earlier, she conspired to deny people their civil rights. I believe that this should be investigated. I don't know whether she committed a crime or not, but I think it should be investigated. I think there ought to be a grand jury. But she, remember what her memo says. She says, I'm giving you this order because this is what the leadership has told me to tell you. Who is the leadership? I want to know what Mayorkas knew about this. I want to see him up on the Hill under oath right now in the early days of the next administration. See if these guys can get their act together, seize the moment, and understand what they should be doing.
Joe, I've been waiting for this all week. It was great to talk to you. Thank you so much for coming on today.
Oh, I'm thrilled. I'm just enjoying my landslide.
How many bottles of wine and how much pasta did you eat that night?
You cannot believe how much wine has been consumed in this house. It is amazing.
Joe, we always love talking to you. Thanks so much. We have got a lot more to get to right now. It is 7:20.
Now
on 105.9 FM and streaming worldwide on the WMAL app.
O'Connor and Company.
Good morning, Washington. It is 7:36 on this Veterans Day. Happy Veterans Day to everyone. Thanks for tuning in to News Talk 105.9 WMAL, where we are making sense of the news. We have a great remaining show coming up at 8:05. We'll talk to Matthew Hurt. He's the chair of the Arlington GOP. He'll tell us how Arlington Republicans are preparing for a Trump administration. And at 8:35, General Jack Keane on the very concerning story of an Iranian plot to assassinate Trump. And he'll also give us his reflections on this Veterans Day. You are listening to O'Connor and Company. I'm Julie Gunlock, sitting in for Larry O'Connor alongside Hans von Spakovsky, the coolest name in radio. Hello, Hans.
I've had people tell me I sound like a Bond villain because of that last name.
Well, joining us now is another cool member of our radio community. It's Trevor Matich. He's WMAL's Commanders analyst to recap the game between the Commanders and the Pittsburgh Steelers. Good morning, Trevor.
Good morning, Julie. Hello, Hans. And Hans, even though people might say you sound like a Hans villain, you didn't deny it. You just say people say that.
I'm keeping an eye on him, Trevor, honestly. Now, first of all, that was a great game. It was a really entertaining game to watch, but the Commanders wasted a 10-point second-half lead. What happened in that second half?
What happened was Russell Wilson of the Steelers, their quarterback. I mean, he was phenomenal in critical moments. His overall stats weren't all that great. Only completed about 50% of his passes, et cetera. But when it came time to make the key plays at the end, including the game-winning touchdown, Wilson was absolutely fantastic. And for the first time really in a long time since the opener, Washington quarterback Jaden Daniels was human. He wasn't bad. He was okay. And going against one of the best defenses in the league, who got some key players back from injury, he was human instead of superhero. Yeah. And it was, he played against a Bond villain style defense, and that's what happened. The veteran quarterback outplayed the rookie down the stretch.
Yeah, but what a heart thumping loss! Yeah. A touchdown the last 2 minutes. And I guess the Steelers are awfully happy they got Mike Williams, aren't they?
Yeah, Mike Williams is the tall receiver they traded just about a week ago from the Jets. They got him from the Jets. So he didn't know the offense. He hadn't had time to practice much. And there was really only one kind of route that he probably would have run when he caught that game-winning touchdown with 2.5 minutes to go. He lined up on the left side. He ran straight down the field into the end zone. Russell Wilson, under pressure, threw the ball way high in the air, just a rainbow. And then it came straight down in the end zone. Coverage was pretty good, but it wasn't quite good enough because the throw ended up being perfect. And the guy covering him for Washington, Benjamin St. Juste, what he did was it was a 3rd and 9, and he tried to cover every possible route combination that Williams could run, and Williams ran right by him. After the game, St. Juste said that he probably should have anticipated that it would have been just a fake, just a straight run down the field, because he didn't have time to work on timing with Wilson on any more complicated routes that would require more timing than just throw the ball up and over. And so he wasn't in quite as good a position as he could have been if he had made that route his priority.
So what does this loss do to their standings and the ultimate goal of every NFL fan, which is trying to get into the Super Bowl?
Ooh, did you say Super Bowl?
He is a Bond villain after all.
I gotta mention it. That's what we all want,
Yeah, you know what? That is a legitimate hope this year. It's not just vapor because of how well this team is playing and how well their rookie quarterback is playing. And down the stretch, the schedule is favorable for Washington. They've got 7 games left to go. 2 of them, and the critical ones, are to Philadelphia. Washington and Philadelphia both have 7 wins right now. There's only one more game of those 7 against the team with the winning record, and that's against the Falcons. The rest of them are against teams that are struggling miserably. So Washington, really, this game on Thursday against Philly is going to be absolutely massive in their hopes to be able to win a division and move into the playoffs that way. But either way, if the playoffs ended today, whether or not they won their division, Washington would easily make the playoff field. So right now, that game against the Steelers doesn't hurt them that bad. The Philly losses would hurt them.
Really quick, Trevor, we saw a heat pack being applied to Jaden Daniels at the beginning of the fourth quarter. He took a shot from J.J. Watt later in the quarter in the back of the end zone. Any word on his rib injury?
Only that it's still lingering. He says it's not that big a deal, but remember that the last 3 games before this, he averaged about 45 yards rushing on the ground. This one, he had 5 yards rushing. Mm-hmm. So it's probably the Steeler defense, but I think it's been bothering him more than he lets on.
Yeah. Trevor, thanks so much for joining us today, and we'll talk to you next week.
Thanks, guys.
We've got more coming up. It is 7:42. Well, it's not a surprise. Some people on the left are freaking out. We've seen women shaving their heads, claiming that they're leaving the country. I hope they do. And this new trend of going no contact with your family if they voted for Trump. And on MSNBC, I suppose it's no surprise, that's what a psychiatrist, a Yale University psychiatrist, suggests. Let's play Cut 18.
Are people challenged with the idea of how do you interact with people who voted for this? Right? If you are an LGBTQ person and you know someone in your family voted essentially against your rights, or you're a woman knowing that, this man was calling people the B word, J.D. Vance was literally calling Kamala Harris the trash and said, we're going to take out the trash. I know a lot of Black women were incredibly triggered by that. And if you then meet somebody and they voted for the people who called you trash, or if you're Puerto Rican, and someone voted that way, do you recommend, just from a psychological standpoint, being around them? We got the holidays coming up.
So I love that you asked this question because, there is a push, I think just a societal norm that if somebody is your family, that they are entitled to your time. And I think the answer is absolutely not. So if you are going into a situation where you have family members, where you have close friends who have voted in ways that are against you, like what you said, against your livelihood, and it's completely fine to not be around those people and to tell them why, to say, I have a problem with the way that you voted because it went against my very livelihood and I'm not going to be around you this holiday. I need to take some space for me. And I actually talk to, adults as well as advising parents for children. I mean, I think, I don't think that you should force children. I don't think you should force adults to be around people just because they're your family. I think there's a level of...
Yeah, we get the point. She's basically telling people to go no contact with their family members, their parents, their kids. This is sick, Hans.
It is, but it's evil. That's evil. It is evil because, and in fact, this is a continuation of the whole philosophy of the left, which is to divide society. They want Americans divided by race, by class. They like that division because they think it helps them win elections. And here they're pushing it. I don't know if you saw this, but, J.D. Vance was asked about this maybe a week or 2 weeks ago. Mm. And he gave this great exposition that I thought people really ought to hear, in which he said, you shouldn't let politics divide you from your family and friends. And this is similar to the way, Julie, as you know, the left thinks that anyone who disagrees with them politically, it's not just that they're wrong on policy. They think you're evil.
And it's violence.
Yeah.
And it's violence.
Right.
I also have a theory on this. I mean, this is classic Marxism, the destruction of the family, the destruction of the family unit, the destruction of community, the tearing down of all institutions, including the family. This is all part of the sort of Marxist dream. And it's no surprise this Amanda Calhoun, the psychiatrist, she oversees other psychiatry residents at Yale. This is horrible when you think about these young minds being formed by this professor. She's pretty radical. In her published work, she writes approvingly of Ibrahim X. Kendi and Franz Fanon, the latter of whom advocated for revolutionary violence. One of her publications is All Doctors Should Be Activists. Sincerely, a psychiatry intern. She obviously wrote that during her internships. But I feel also that this is a violation of what doctors what doctors agree to, and that is do no harm. It is their code, and she's doing great harm to people.
No, I think it's unethical the advice she's giving, and no, it is a violation of the most ancient oath that doctors take, and the fact that she is a professor teaching this to other students and others going into this profession. Another reason why I would not want to send my kids to that university.
Yes. Well, we've got a real problem with the medical community. We know this from the transgender. I'm not going to go too far into this because that deserves a whole nother segment, but we have seen this with the transgender issue, the medical community bullying parents, lying to parents, the entire psychological industry. Of course, there are some outliers and there are some real heroes that are speaking out against this, but this is a major problem, the sort of leftist activism within the medical community and the psychiatry community. And I hope I hope that ends soon because it's really hard for people who genuinely need help.
Plus, it's dangerous. They're allowing politics to drive their decision making, not medicine.
You mentioned that, J.D. Vance. We have it. I just want to play it real quick. It's super quick. Cut 20.
This is my most important advice. Whether you vote for me, whether you vote for Donald Trump, whether you vote for Kamala Harris, don't cast aside family members and lifelong friendships. Politics is not worth it. And I think if we follow that principle, we'll heal the divide in this country. Thank you, Matt.
Let's just be clear. They called this guy weird, okay?
Right.
But the Yale psychiatrist, she's not supposed to be weird? No, that's normal. That's how normal people behave.
My counseling advice, people, is listen to what J.D. Vance said, not this nutty psychiatrist.
Very good. It's 7:52.